a lot of the comments I'm seeing are basically everyone is horrified, just horrified at the two petulant children who were ranting at each other on stage. And then some people took issue with commenters saying the two of them were terrible. Um, and said, well, we all know it was Trump who was horrible, or Cheeto is horrible, or, whatever nickname. And I even heard from a Democrat, they thought Biden looked incompetent. So, wow, opinions galore. Um, Now, I did a brief fact check of some of the stuff I remembered hearing, especially in the beginning, because at one point I couldn't hear much. Well, we all stopped being able to really hear, but also my son was talking, talking, and it's good. He's interested, so that's a good thing. But I was struck by some of the facts shared in the beginning of the debate. For instance, right in the very beginning, Joe Biden said that 100 million people in the United States had pre-existing conditions. And immediately Trump said, "You're wrong. I don't know where you got that." So I made a mental note to look that up. And of course, fact checkers were very busy already with that one and others. Um, so I thought the fact checkers, did, at least for NBC, did pretty well with the figure on pre-existing conditions. Um, the first thing that came up in my search was NBC News. So Adam Edelman of NBC says Trump and Biden came out of the gate with conflicting statements over how many people in the U.S. have pre-existing conditions. Biden said there are 100 million such people, and that they would lose their health care coverage should the Affordable Care Act be eliminated. Trump insisted Biden's number was wrong. Quote, there's 100 million people. They gave Biden's quote. Then it says, studies on the topic show a range that would technically make both men correct. The Kaiser Family Foundation estimated in 2018 that at least 53.8 million adults had a pre-existing condition that would make them unable to buy insurance. Now, NBC News probably laid off all their copy editors, but it says at least 53.8 million adults under, and then it has no age. Then another study conducted by Avalere, a healthcare consulting firm, estimated that 102 million Americans had a pre-existing condition that would make them unable to buy insurance. I think the actuaries would probably have those figures. But that's the thing about statistics and estimates, especially when you're talking about a snapshot in time of everyone alive who has a pre-existing condition. Now, if it's an insurance term, you think they could maybe narrow it down a little more. But I was surprised. I was surprised and yet not surprised actually by that 100 million figure because heart disease is so prevalent. I think more than 500,000 people die every year of heart disease. And I was shocked to find out that 1 in 5 deaths of both white American males and black American males are due to heart disease. So where is my live video? Okay. Yes. Oh, okay. Biden was the first one to interrupt, but Trump should not have followed suit. I honestly, Jenny, yeah, it is a high number. I think it um I don't I'm not an expert on it, but it does sound high. So that's the first fact check. Now, as far as about interrupting, I mean, I expected it. I completely expected it. And I actually did not have that much of a problem with Trump interrupting. I mean, look how high the stakes are. We've never been in a situation like this with so much misinformation going on from the media. Uh, Seriously, I mean, I'm not trying to criticize my profession, but it's a fact. It is a fact that we have gone into more divergent info streams this year than any other year. And it was bad enough in the first decade of this century. Um, I didn't really have a problem with Trump interrupting, at least not in the beginning, because basically you snooze, you lose. If you're going to follow rules, then you're not going to look tough to your base, and you're not going to look like you can take charge to your non-base, the people on the fence. Besides, given this post-truth and post-fact world, if you don't get out a counter argument to what your opponent is saying, the American people may never hear the truth, because by the time you get your chance, that ship has sailed. Now, I get it. You have to weigh the negativity that results from interrupting with the idea of you not being able to correct the record. But I expected Trump to interrupt, and I expected Biden to repeat media talking points, and I was not disappointed. Neither man disappointed. Um, Biden was, I mean, through and through, repeating the false statements, the errors, and the inaccuracies that have been carried through in the Trump presidency regarding President Trump, um, throughout the entire presidency and before. I mean, it really feels in a way kind of like we're back in 2016, as far as like, 200 generals have now signed a letter saying Trump is unstable and unfit for office. And it just makes me laugh, because it's like unfit for office or unfit to have a second term, because he's already been in office. I mean, it's a small point. Um, Anyway, let's see what you said. Oh, people and kids. Yeah, the interruptions didn't bother me, and I was hoping Biden would slip up and say something like "shut up," because we know he gets angry. He got angry at that factory worker who questioned him about the Second Amendment, and he didn't say many horrible gaffes, because he knows not to do that. He knows to stick to the message. Stick to the message. And besides, he has, on his side of the debate stage, he has, let's face it, the entire cadre of mainstream media, even now possibly including Fox News. And on the Trump side, he has no one. And not even all Republicans, although the majority of Republicans do support him. I think the fact check from NBC is really instructive, so I'm just gonna continue with that. So after they went into the amount of people with pre-existing conditions, they did something very interesting. They said that Trump was wrong about saying that people with pre-existing conditions would be protected. Now, that's an interesting thing, because really that's not provable right now, because he hasn't implemented his health care plan. And the way that Jane C. Tim and Sahil Kapoor of NBC News write it, they don't really clarify the timeline, as far as like, okay, yeah, well, he tried to pass, a replacement for Obamacare, and we all remember how it died in the Senate, but they act like it was some random event, like, oh, and it died in the Senate, as opposed to it being a pretty epic takedown at the last minute by the late Senator John McCain, who voted no, defeating the um, skinny replacement bill. Then, in the way that they word it, they say, it's true. Okay, they say, of course, it's true Republicans eliminated the individual mandate, which means that you pay a penalty if you don't carry health insurance. And they say, but Trump is wrong on the point of pre-existing conditions. We've fact-checked this at length before, and it's still false. Like, oh, we're so much better than the putrid Republicans. They're just so deceptive. So they say he has long insisted that he and the GOP will protect people with pre-existing conditions from losing their health insurance. But he has pursued legislation, litigation, and executive actions to dismantle those protections under the Affordable Care Act. Now, do they say what his litigation and executive actions and legislation are that has worked to dismantle protections for people with pre-existing conditions? No, they don't. So it's technically true that he's trying to dismantle the Affordable Care Act. Now, I remember when um, the Obamacare debate was happening the first time, and after it had been implemented, and I remember not understanding anyone's opposition to it at all because I hadn't done my homework. But there are two things I learned since then that were really eye-opening, maybe more. One is small business owners got killed by Obamacare. I mean, some people that's really obvious, but to other people it's not. I mean, their premiums went, doubled and tripled, and then they couldn't even keep their doctor. It was a whole section of the population that really lost, and it does seem that it would have been unconstitutional, given that they were using the money gotten from the higher premiums to be able to cover those with pre-existing conditions. Now, how is Trump going to be able to cover people with pre-existing conditions as he promises? Well, what I've heard is, we pay more than anyone in the world for healthcare, and we still don't really get that great of healthcare depending on where you live and your insurance. That is because most of these insurance companies have monopolies wherever they are. In fact, things have gotten so bad that wealthy people don't even get insurance. They just use concierge services for their medicine, meaning they just pay like a retainer, and instead of going to insurance, it goes to a physician they like and they trust, and they don't have to deal with the riffraff. So, um, the second fact that I gleaned when I was working on an article about Obamacare after Trump won is that there are so many people who qualify for Medicaid who are not enrolled for whatever reason. They just don't have it together. They're not enrolled. They're not taking advantage of it. Maybe it's hard to use. All things which point to government taking control over coverage for everyone could be problematic. But let's say it's not problematic. I did hear Biden say that people would automatically be enrolled. Now, that sounds like a good idea, actually, for the poor, and that the poor and those who can't afford really expensive medical procedures that they might need, or even catastrophic health insurance. So, um, the problem with that is if you're going to put every single person on a Medicaid-like plan, then instead of all of the hospitals becoming like, let's say, Cedars-Sinai here in LA, it's possible that everything just becomes kind of mediocre. Now, go into an inner city hospital sometime and see what it's like. It's really tough. I mean, they have homeless people just lining the hallways, even on a non-corona year. Um, Therefore, if Trump is going to protect people with pre-existing conditions and stay faithful to the Constitution, what he's probably going to do is introduce competition. So, um, if you've noticed, you can only get a certain type of insurance carrier in your market. You can't go to anyone nationally as you would with auto insurance or other types of insurance. This protects the health insurance companies and it lines their pockets and it gets them those big bonuses that they love. Um, so that is, it's a situation that the health insurers love and the hospitals too. Um, Costs are out of control. Many times they're way more than they should be. And we don't even really know because we have health insurance. But I do believe that there are things that he could do. He already has gone up against Big Pharma, and he's going to allow the U.S. government to be purchasing medications overseas and abroad, generic medications. And this is huge. Of course, the media is going to fact check this as being not really a big deal, but he mentioned it. And insulin, anyone who's a diabetic, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's gone down quite a bit. So if he can do that with pharmaceuticals and generic drugs, then you know I'd like to give him a chance to lower healthcare costs and improve the quality of healthcare through competition. Because as we know, the free market and competition, within reason, with regulations that have teeth, okay, you can't have cozy regulators with the people they're regulating, um, is a way to foster and encourage innovation. So this fact check on pre-existing conditions is completely irrelevant and nebulous because um, it's in the future. And this is what happens a lot is that he's talking about his intentions because it proved to be a lot harder than he thought it would be, Trump, I mean, to change the Affordable Care Act, which was in many cases not affordable. And as we know, many carriers famously pulled out of all kinds of markets. And here's another fact that many people don't know that I learned. This is the third fact I learned when I was doing an article on the ACA after Trump won. The third fact is that all the health insurance carriers that pulled out of the ACA exchanges and pulled out of Obamacare as we were heading for the election in 2016, um, they were not making a profit, as most people know, okay, on those exchanges. However, all of those carriers also do Medicaid business. They cover Medicaid, they work with the government on that. Well, guess what? Medicaid is a cash cow. Uh, this is a fact. It's the side of the insurer's business that makes them all their money. Which is interesting because some of the states decided to expand Medicaid as part of their ACA um, compliance, which I find odd since when they did do that and brought in, more middle class or higher income people into the exchanges, um, the insurers weren't making a profit. So it's possible that when the government is involved and is just purchasing care in a bulk manner and reimbursing, that nobody's minding the prices, nobody's minding the store. So those are my thoughts about the fact checking on healthcare. Then now it was a long debate. I actually kind of zoned out because my son was talking, and I couldn't. And it did become a shouting match. But I mean, we don't hear uh, anything more mild than that every night on cable news. A lot of times on cable news, I'm like, oh my God, I can't hear. But I guess it's not for everyone. He doesn't. Um, it's not for everyone, and they don't have to watch cable news arguments. But I do because it often when it's live like that, it reveals a lot about a person. So I hope you're not falling asleep, Jenny. I don't know who else is here. Oh, yes. You think it's good that Trump is trying to dismantle the Affordable Nefarious Act? That's cool. Oh, it was 2 against 1. Yes, Kevin, it was. Thanks for joining. Thanks for joining. Oh, yeah. It was not only 2 against 1. It was, I'd say, how many media companies are there? 6? So that means it was actually 8 against 1, right? If you figure Wallace being the moderator has more weight than just all of the media that are behind Joe Biden and, you know, using the totally misleading and false talking points, including this ridiculous story in the New York Times about Trump's taxes. I mean, who doesn't count their Social Security and payroll taxes as part of their tax bill? Not me. Did we get an amount of payroll tax that he paid? No, we actually didn't. Um, I could get into that more, but I thought it was funny. He said you'll be seeing it soon. I mean, I would love to look at the real tax returns. There was a video going around, apparently that there's some kind of digital warrior named George Nassif, and I don't know if I'm saying it right, but he said that he has copies of all of Trump's tax returns um, because the DNC has had them for years. But in any case, the New York Times story was not the whole truth and nothing but the truth. It was a lot of spin. Um, and it wasn't just a little spin, it was a lot. And for instance, I mean, there is a paragraph in there about him paying ahead of time. He paid an estimated tax, which is what people do when they're not ready, they're not finished, I guess, with their return. So they pay an estimated tax. One year he paid almost 2 million, and another year he paid more than 4 million. And then I guess it was rolled into future years. But if that's the case, then you can't really very well average things out and come up with a number around 700. I also found it very interesting that the New York Times decided to compare this as if it had any value whatsoever with Nixon and what Nixon oh good, I'm glad you're awake, Jenny. And what Nixon paid one year. I find it laughable that people are thinking this is going to be some kind of a negative against Trump when when we see the actual payroll tax amounts and Social Security as well as Medicare tax that he would pay, we should be seeing quite a lot. Now, as far as him cutting taxes, I went and looked, and tax revenue has gone up every single year since the 2017 Tax Reform Act. Tax revenue has gone up not just by a small amount. It's gone up by you know, it's gone up by hundreds of billions of dollars. So, um, also, I found it interesting to note that everybody's always talking about the corporate tax, but the corporate tax actually pays for a smaller share of government spending than the private income tax. Also, we got to remember that the wealthy, the 1%, the 1% is a problem only in so much as they work to consolidate and keep their power and they think they're above the law. They're not a problem when they're producers and they produce jobs. And all of their contributions that they enact are automatically going back into the economy. So there's that. And then another thing we have to remember is that when you're a commercial real estate developer, you're going to be dealing with a very complex tax structure. You're going to be dealing with depreciation. You're going to be dealing with multiple properties. And so, frankly, it seems like the New York Times um, did a terrible job. Just a terrible job. They could have easily talked to real estate developers to compare him to comparable real estate developers. But incidentally, did anyone hear that the head of FedEx has challenged the New York Times to reveal their taxes, or has said the New York Times paid zero tax one year? So the New York Times said FedEx paid zero tax one year, and then today, I guess, FedEx said the New York Times paid zero. And we have some analysts. There's an article I can post. It was it on CBS or something? Yeah, CBS, talking about this tit for tat and between the New York Times and Federal Express. So the New York Times is pointing the finger at Trump. Meantime, they actually benefited from the 2000, no, did they benefit from the 2017 tax cut? I don't know, because they all hedge to the future as well, which is also what Trump did. So there's that. Another article, another factoid that I was just, my jaw went dropped on the floor. I bet you nobody fact checked this one. Let me see if NBC did. So of course, Trump was ready for Biden to say that basically Trump had killed 204,000 people with coronavirus, right? By not handling it. And so he was ready. And I don't know if y'all caught this, but he said, on your watch, Biden, 307,000 veterans died due to poor care. And I thought, damn, okay, no, it's not. Let's see. Did it mention it? Nope. Nope. Not a word about that. So, luckily I remembered the figure and I looked it up. Look, Kurt Devine, CNN, September 3rd, 2015. 307,000 veterans may have died awaiting Veterans Affairs healthcare, report says. Hundreds of thousands of veterans listed in the Department of Veterans Affairs enrollment system died before their applications for care were processed, according to a report issued Wednesday. The VA's Inspector General found that out of about 800,000 records stalled in the agency system for managing healthcare enrollment, there were more than 307,000 records that belonged to veterans who had died months or years in the past. The Inspector General said due to limitations in the system's data, the number of records do not necessarily represent veterans actively seeking enrollment in VA healthcare. Okay, so then, in response to a request by the House Committee on Veterans Affairs to investigate a whistleblower's allegations of mismanagement at the VA's Health Eligibility Center, the Inspector General also found VA staffers incorrectly marked unprocessed applications and may have deleted 10,000 or more records in the last 5 years. Wow. In one case, a veteran who applied for VA care in 1998 was placed in pending status for 14 years. Another veteran who passed away in 1988 was found to have an unprocessed record lingering in 2014, the investigation found. For more than a year, CNN investigated and reported on veterans' deaths and delays at VA facilities across the country, including detailed investigations 2013 and 14, 2 facilities in South Carolina and Georgia. Oh my God. Related video, Navy vet loses nose, blames VA delays. So we know it was bad. I remember when I was very fond of Obama, or I believed in his dream, and I heard about this, and it just did not compute. You know how it takes a while to accept. It did not compute. But wow, that was a really good comeback by Trump regarding healthcare. It really puts things in perspective. Speaking of the 204,000 deaths, I'm working on a new chart, an article showing reasons why the United States might have so many deaths, in addition to them being recorded differently than other countries, okay? Japan uses a PCR confirmed test only to record deaths by COVID, okay? I think the United Kingdom was was saying people had died when they didn't have a lab test, but then they changed it over and their deaths dropped. What else? Germany, lab test. Okay, so that's comparing apples to oranges because in the United States, believe it or not, with all the tests we've developed, a very large portion of the recorded deaths are presumed, or they say suspected or presumed, and have not been confirmed by a PCR lab test. So, that fact is very little known fact. So we're not even possibly looking at a number that is comparable to other countries. And yet we have this breathless, outraged, shrieking media that loves to pass these milestones and puts no perspective on it whatsoever. Which, as I'm sure you would agree, is infuriating. So, about the debate, I was disappointed in a way when President Trump did not say, I denounce all white supremacy, because he's said it before. The left didn't accept it, said he was insincere. They say, well, it doesn't roll off the tongue, or he tweets about all these other things, but he doesn't tweet about that. And I thought about it, I thought, well, he really was fired up talking about Antifa. And Joe Biden said Antifa was an idea, I think he said. So anyone who watched the riots live in their city, which I did, and the utter lack of preparedness that the law enforcement leadership had, knows that Biden is. I'm not saying, and I saw Antifa on the video, but I am saying that we have enough reporters now and people on the ground who have shown us that Antifa is very much, very, very organized, traveling around the country, for us to know that Biden is full of it. So I believe Trump was focusing on that because that is the recent thing at hand. Does anybody know, other than the Boogaloo crew or whatever, which I have yet to really see anyone committing violent acts in the aftermath of the George Floyd tragedy and murder? I have yet to see anybody marching around saying anti-Semitic things or trying to kill people of color. I've seen a lot of people of color killed by the rioters and the mobs and the looters. Um, I don't know much about the Proud Boys, but I didn't think they were white supremacists. Um, you can correct me if I'm wrong, put something in the comments. But yeah, I just wish that he had said, I emphatically denounce all white supremacy. Now, he feels like he doesn't have anything to do with white supremacists. He actually does have a long record of helping African Americans, which has been suppressed from the media, yes. And the Central Park 5 thing was absolutely not racist. If you go back and read the record on them, everyone thought they were guilty. The police extracted a confession. But beyond that, there was even an article in the Sunday New York Times, like maybe 10 years later, uh, looking into the woman who was near death, beaten and raped, who did survive, and how they were saying that she felt like maybe the boys had been there and were responsible, even though there was another man who confessed to it. Um, and looking at that article in retrospect, it seems almost racist in a way, but then you look at that article and it says those boys who were coming across forgive me, my New York geography isn't great, but they were living in housing that was adjacent to Central Park. And one night, didn't have anything really good to do. Well, that's my bedtime reminder. Didn't have much to do, and we're looking to go and harass some rich people in Central Park, and actually pulled somebody off his bike, they narrowly escaped. Now this actually did happen. No, they didn't rape anybody. So, Trump taking out a full page ad and calling for the death penalty. You can just imagine, the sentiment may be all, oh, police harass young men of color or young black men. Of course, some do. They harass young white men too, and women. But go back in time to when the Central Park jogger was found near death. A mere shell of herself. Her bones were crushed. Her face was crushed. I mean, can we have some balance here? Can we ever decide we're not going to go along with the herd? And this is how I felt about the debate tonight. Really, frankly, I start seeing all these comments on Facebook. Conservatives who hate Trump, they were loving it because it gave them the opportunity to get on their sanctimonious high horse and talk down to everyone else and say, I told you so. you know they suck. I hate politics. I hate both sides. Lies all around. So it's so easy to be an armchair critic. It's so easy to say that it's all lies. But what really is important is if you realize what is a lie and what is not, what is an important lie and what is not an important lie, what is a lie about the something in the future that's unprovable, which I talk about a lot. So I frankly thought, I don't know. I don't know if Biden looked incompetent, but he didn't disappoint. I was waiting for that. I was waiting for him to get mad. When he said shut up, I was loving it. Let's not go along with the herd, okay? It's been a completely unprecedented year, and it's going to be a completely unprecedented debate. Anyone who thought otherwise, I don't know what they were thinking. But, you know, we have very short memories. Maybe we should all go back and watch the 2016 debates. And or like I said, cable news when people argue. So there was a lot to unpack. There was a lot of substance going on there. I thought the healthcare thing went pretty well for Trump. I thought Biden just kept repeating the media lies, including about Charlottesville. Unbelievable. And that's funny because as much as Trump interrupted, he didn't say much there. I mean, he should have been expecting that. That's the main lie. That's the main way that Biden launched his campaign. That's really all he has to stand on. Style, not substance. He has no good record or anything like that. So, as far as, helping African Americans, helping blue cities, helping manufacturing jobs left this country, as you know. I was just looking up the fact check about Barack Obama and how many jobs he added. It's the quality. He added to the service economy, yes, but it's quality more than quantity, and it's also labor force participation rate, which was doing great, unprecedented before COVID. So, okay, I'm gonna look at the comments because I haven't looked at them in a while. And let's see. Uh-oh, did I close my... No, I didn't close my window. So yeah, the veterans thing. Quite a surprise. Mark Levin. Biden got away with endless lies and cheap shots. Thank you, Mark. The questions were mostly asked from a left perspective. Thank you, Mark. The science of climate change. What's wrong with critical race theory? Yeah, like, what's wrong with critical race theory when most of the American public is not familiar with what they're teaching in schools, what they're teaching in college, and they were teaching to government employees. And let me tell you something, as someone who spent most of her adult life as a liberal, I I now know that the real picture, I'd say 99% of the time, is not what we're getting, which is super scary to me. That's what's scary, not some men interrupting each other on stage. And I think everybody knows how I feel. I think Biden is a horrible candidate, any way you look at it. I was so angry when he said he beat Bernie Sanders. I beat Bernie Sanders. I beat 23 other candidates. And you know how I did it? I did it, but I did it because we cheated. He's like Beetlejuice, like a head of white hair. And I mean, he looked decent. They probably gave him they put him in a hyperbaric chamber before he went on. But man, he's a horrible candidate. I don't know how anyone can even take him seriously. So what matters is we're not getting the story on a lot of things. Okay. Hope you like my Biden imitation. Anyone else? Anyone else? All right. Well, I thank you for joining. And I am so grateful for all of you, grateful for your company on this journey. And if you did like this live video and you think there's value in it, please like, share, and also if you haven't, you know, if you haven't officially followed me on the Back to Facts page, please do. Yes. Okay. So keep calm and share complete facts. Good night, everyone. Good night.